Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jay Wallen, and today we're going to be doing something just a little bit different. I was in the drive-thru for Raising Cane's chicken the other day, and the lady came on the intercom and she said, "Chicken, chicken, chicken, what combo you picking?" And I was like, oh man, what combo am I picking? And then it hit me. I was like, this would be a good idea for a little YouTube segment. So we're going to try something a little new. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a technique, and then I'm going to tell you guys what combo I'm using to throw that. We're going to talk about rods, we're going to talk about reels, and we're going to talk about line. Those are the three main components to any combo that we're going to talk about. And today, for the first one, we're going to talk about frogging. It's frogging season. It's getting a little bit cool. It's fall. Grass is starting to die back on some of these lakes. You know, I'm thinking Guntersville, I'm thinking Chickamauga. And so we're going to get started off with frogs. Before we get started, I do want to give a big shout out and thank you to Calcoast Fishing. They are today's sponsor for this video. Calcoast makes a lot of little innovative products to make your life as an angler on the water easier. And the first one we're going to talk about real quick is the Calcoast bait sack. They come in large, medium, small. It's just a little, it's a little sack for your treble hooked baits. I do like the large ones for the Alabama rig and large swim baits. That kind of stuff really keeps your baits organized, so you're not tangling them in a bunch of, you know, your line and your rods and other baits. Really primo for treble hooked baits. Another little product from Calcoast Fishing is the Calcoast Battle Box. I've actually got a link right here that we'll put up on the screen. It's just a great terminal tackle box. They got little ammo cans, helps you keep your hooks and sinkers perfectly organized. Make sure you check them out. Give them a big shout out. Thank you, Calcoast, for sponsoring today's video. Let's talk about frogs, right? Let's talk about the frogging setup for today. Now, I use Shimano and G Loomis rods and reels. You don't have to use Shimano or G Loomis. They're just the best. You know, that's why I use them. So my setup consists of a 7'3" extra heavy Shimano X Pride rod. You know, a lot of people want to go with 7'5", 7'6". I've even seen people use 8-foot rods for their frog rods. I personally, you know, I'm kind of a short guy. I think 7'3" is about right. It's perfect. You know, even though the action on this says it's extra heavy, you know, as you can see, there's quite a bit of tip to this rod, you know. So I do like a long, heavy rod, but I also want something with a little bit of tip. Now, what that soft tip is going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to make a longer cast. And to me, having long casts with a frog is very important. You're going to get on some of these mats down at Guntersville, Chickamauga, you know, all these grassy lakes in the south. These grass mats can be super deep, you know, and sometimes it's hard to get a frog, you know, really far back into those mats. And so what you're going to run into is if you can get that frog a little bit further into the mat, a little bit further than the last guy that fished it, you know, you're probably going to have an opportunity at some fish that don't see as many frogs come their way. You know, you can reach those areas that aren't getting as much pressure if you can get your frog, you know, cast a little bit further into it. Now, this isn't extra heavy, so it does have that little bit of soft tip, but it's got a super strong backbone. So, you know, when you're setting the hook from a long distance with braid, you know, that backbone's really going to hold that fish and drive that hook in. Let's move on talking about the reel. You know, the rod is, when it comes to a frog, the rod is probably the most important. But a reel, I think, is very, very important as well. You know, I've made mistakes in the past where I've used slow reels, you know, 6.1 ratios, even 7.1 to 1 ratio reels were not fast enough for me. I'm throwing the Shimano Corrado DC, and it's an 8.5 to 1 gear ratio. First off, I use the DC. That's the digital control. Basically, the only reason I'm using that is because a frog is something that I make a lot of repetitive casts with, and I want to minimize the opportunity for backlash. You know, if you backlash this braid, it's a mess. If you backlash it really bad, you know, you could have to cut that off. I mean, you know, braid backlash is really bad, and sometimes it gets to the point where you just have to cut it off. So I do like using the Curado DC just to help minimize some of that backlash. And if I do happen to backlash, it's typically not nearly as bad with the DC. But back to the gear ratio. So like I said, I'm throwing an 8.5 to 1. That's a really fast reel. And the idea behind that is when I've got that frog way out in that mat, you know, I've made that big long bomb cast, and I set the hook on a fish and it's a long way away. I want to be able to get that fish out of that mat as quickly as possible. The longer you let that fish stay in that mat, the greater your odds of losing that fish. So the speed of the reel isn't so much about working the bait as it is getting that fish out of that grass when you get it hooked. You know, I want to keep that reel coming fast. I want that fish up on top of the surface. You know, I want to keep it from burying down in that grass. So that's what that 8.5 to 1 ratio reel allows you to do. Let's talk about line choices. You know, I would not go any less than 50-pound test. Some guys go as high as 80, 85 pounds. That's probably some of those guys down in Florida fishing some really rough vegetation. There's some sharp stuff that can really wear on your line. And then, you know, if you've got the opportunity to catch double-digit size bass, you might want to step your line up a little bit. I throw 65-pound braid. I do like the Power Pro super slick braid. I think the knots are really clean. It comes through the guides really well, and doesn't tend to backlash as often. But 65, I think, is about the middle of the road. I've never broken a fish off with 65-pound braid, so I think you'll be safe with 65. You know, color doesn't really matter. I like the moss green. Doesn't really matter. But definitely you want to use a braid, and you want to use something really strong. Like I said, I would not drop below 50 pounds. You know, and the idea is not that you're going to catch a big bass weighing 50 pounds. It really comes down to how much grass is going to be on that fish when you get it in. What kind of grass. You know, lily pads can destroy fishing line. So, you know, it's really about abrasion resistance. You know, the heavier line you use, the more abrasive resistant it will be. And so that's really kind of the idea behind using a big heavy braided line. Shimano X Pride, 7'3" extra heavy. Shimano Curado, 8.5 to 1 gear ratio. Power Pro 65-pound test braided line. And that will cover all of your frogging needs. On this particular rod, I've already got rigged up a Stanley ribbit frog. You know, that's the Buzz frog, just on a straight retrieve. This works great for that. And it also works great for popping frogs, the Spro walking frogs, the Bronzeye 65s. Works great for that kind of stuff. So no matter what kind of frog you're wanting to use, this setup's going to be perfect for all of them. Now I go back to the rod length. You know, I'm using a 7'3", and if you're using a walking frog or a popping frog, that little bit shorter rod, you know, it's not a 7'6" or an 8 foot, will allow you to actually work that bait. You know, you get too long of a rod and you're not really going to be able to walk that frog as well as you'd like, or pop that frog as well as you'd like. So that's, again, where I think the 7'3" is just the sweet spot when it comes to length. All right, guys, that wraps it up for me. That's my frogging combo. Everything I talked about will be in the description. If you need links to anything, it's all right there. Make sure to give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any videos coming down the line. Also, make sure you go over to cowcoastfishing.com. Check out some of their amazing products. I'm sure they're going to make your life on the water a lot easier. I know they have mine. Next month, we're going to be talking about the Alabama rig. The Alabama rig is something I've thrown for a number of years now. And I've almost got it perfected as far as rod and reel and line and all that stuff. So we'll get into that next month. I'm really excited about it. I think the timing should be about right. It's starting to cool off. Bait fish are getting clumped up. And I think the Alabama rig is going to be hot this winter. And I can't wait to talk about it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.